Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of People Watching. Today is November 5th, 2025. I'm your host, Garrett J. Lawrence, and we are coming off of the tail end of November 4th's election night for Virginia and NYC. We have Abigail Spanberger winning the election last night over Virginia. She's a former CIA officer, has won. She's also the first woman to lead the Old Dominion. And then back up in New York City, Zohran Mamdani wins, becoming the first Democratic Socialist mayor. He's basically making history as the first Muslim and South Asian in that role. But furthermore, I think we're going to spend a little bit of time on those two topics, probably a little bit heavier on Virginia, since I'm a Virginia resident. I grew up here, lived here my whole entire life. I care very much about this state. And I have some concerns about the future of the state, where we might go moving forward, and what kind of policy changes Spanberger has in mind. I will say right off the bat, she seems to be a little bit more moderate than others. I'm hoping that remains the same and she doesn't really infringe on the culture that's built up here since Youngkin was made governor back in 2021, I think, or was it 2020? I think it was 2021. And with that being said, it's interesting to watch this happen. It's kind of I don't think a lot of people expected it, but even at that, I mean, Winsome Sears was great. The opponent who ran against Abigail Spanberger, she was great, but still not even one of the best options. I think it's unfortunate. I do like, though, that she kind of didn't count this as a loss, and she said that at the end of the day, she's a Christian first, Republican second, and it'll always be that way, and I heavily agree with that. I kind of want to reciprocate that, too. I'll be praying for Abigail Spanberger and praying that she, is going to lead well, and maybe she'll have a change of heart on some of her policies that I disagree with. However, Attorney General J. Jones did win his position last night. Not too happy about that. I think it's a big disgrace. I'm not going to hold back on that at all. I think it's a huge disgrace to the American people and the people of Virginia after he came out and basically has shared and expressed no rebuke or rebuttal or sort of searching for forgiveness at all for what he said about murdering his opponent's children. And I think going forward, as we kind of enter this age of nationalism versus, socialism and communism and just plain out evil and political violence, I think as we enter into that era, we're going to see more and more of this. I think we're going to see more and more people dismiss any sort of, calls for violence. And they're just going to be like, yeah, it's fine. Which I think is just totally bonkers. And I'm really kind of depressed about that. And I mean, let's think about it for a second. Like, who would have thought, right? We had the attempt on Trump's life back in, was it July 2024 or was it June 2024? And then since then, we've had Charlie Kirk die. Plenty of people spew utter demonic crap about celebrating his death. And then not even, 2 months later, we just elected an attorney general who said he would kill his opponent's children in order for them to understand the meaning of death and whatever the hell he said. I don't even care. Pretty dark moment, I think, in terms of that. Do I think we're going to have super extreme changes from Spanberger? Not really. We've seen Democratic governors be elected plenty of times before in Virginia. It's not the first time this has happened. Actually, the first time we've had a Republican governor was back in 2021. And prior to that, it had been a long time, I believe. We're kind of a rhino state. We have a lot of really conservative counties and cities. But at the end of the day, we kind of lose it out to Virginia Beach and Norfolk and Fairfax and Langley and Richmond. That's just how things go here. That being said, I don't think she is, Ms. Spanberger is, this super insane, crazy leftist, but I do think there are things that I do fundamentally disagree with her on. One of which is how she plans on basically blocking any sort of discriminatory policy on transgenderism or LGBTQIA or LGBTQ plus ideas. And basically, she's saying she's going to leave the decisions up to the school boards, allowing for parental input, but is still going to block discrimination. Again, I don't think it's discrimination to prevent a man dressed as a woman to go into a girl's bathroom. I kind of have dug into this topic a lot with a lot of my friends, and I'm just going to say it right off the bat. You're kind of a pushover and a loser if you're a father or a mother or a brother or a sister, and you're okay with that, and you're okay with a dude being able to dress up and go into a women's bathroom. And I'm going to kind of follow the feminist kind of line of logic here and talk statistics a little bit, but aren't men statistically the ones who commit the most sexual assaults? Don't men often infringe on women's rights the most, right? Not that I agree with these statistics all the time, but I'm just going to kind of use your own line of thinking here and say, why would you want to put people that are more often to do these things into a woman's bathroom, especially if you're a feminist? I thought feminism was uplifting and prioritizing women, not taking priority away from them and prioritizing men who want to pretend to be women. A lot of these men who use this ideology and use this way to identify as women to just take more advantage of, biological women. Real safe. Just know that I think you're a loser and I think you're a pushover. And I don't think you should have any sort of voice on any sort of political or public discourse if you think that a man can go into a woman's bathroom. Same thing if you voted for Jay Jones and you voted for that consciously. Again, I don't want to ever hear you and your comments on what you think is right and wrong, because you voted for a guy who wants to murder his opponent's children. And I think that's insane and it's demonic, and you have no place in this society. I really don't think so, especially if that's where your vote's going to go. That being said, we're going to talk about Spanberger's Growing Virginia plan. And so we're going to break this down a little bit. But first, she's going to try to nurture the growth of Virginia. We use this a lot. She uses this term a lot. And so we're going to talk a little bit of background on Abigail Spanberger by asking, who is she? She's definitely someone worth knowing. She was born in 1979. She's raised in a hardworking family. She served in the CIA fighting terrorism overseas before coming home to represent folks in Congress. As a mom of three, she's got the grounded perspective some of the time, focusing on practical solutions, bridging divides like the Good Samaritan, crossing lines to help. And her ideology kind of leans, again, like I said earlier, moderate Democrat with an emphasis on unity and service over the super extremes. However, I'm going to make this point real quick. I think Republicans lost this election because the Democrats figured out that they don't have to run against something anymore. And this goes for Zohran Mamdani as well. He won in New York because he was running for something and not against something. So I think that's really impressive. I think that's something impressive. I think Trump originally did that. He tried to do. He continued to do that last year in the 2024 election. And I think where like Harris really lost out is because she was just running. Kamala Harris, she was just running on the idea that everything was fine and nothing needs to get fixed. So that's really silly. Moreover, we're going to start with some categories here. We're going to talk about the economy and the workforce, how she's going to change things there, education, healthcare, and then her thoughts on reproductive and LGBTQ plus rights, the environment and energy, public safety, immigration, housing, and voting. And that's about it. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Zohran Mamdani a little bit, because that topic is really interesting. So, right off the bat, talking about good old economy and workforce. So, Spanberger wants to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. require paid sick and family leave, and expand apprenticeships in fields like healthcare, tech, and manufacturing. She's also wanting to invest in rural broadband and protect Virginia businesses from federal tariffs if they come. What does this mean in practice for a lot of working families? It's going to mean, like places in Roanoke and Danville, a $15 wage would mean and could mean paying rent without skipping meals. Their Urban Institute estimates it could lift 200,000 people out of poverty and add about $1.2 billion in local spending each year. Apprenticeships could also help fill the 100,000 open jobs in high-demand fields, according to the Virginia Employment Commission. So some might argue, we're going to increase in spending. I would never categorize families finally getting out of poverty as an increase in spending. I'm just going to put that out there. Then here's kind of the downside here. So for each of her policy ideas, we're going to look at the good, what it could do for us, and then kind of the downside. So the good about this new kind of idea on bumping wages and stuff, the positive outcome is that our economy booms. The downside is that some of the small businesses might have to cut hours or raise prices to cover higher labor costs. That is probably 99% likely. We see that over and over again in every sort of instance where this is experimented with or implemented. Look at Seattle, look at Oregon, look at California. It almost always results in a raise in prices. Now, the jump from $12.41 to $15 an hour is not that bad. Okay? It's not that bad of a jump, but I still think it's enough to where it's going to probably negatively impact a lot of small businesses before it positively impacts anything. Furthermore, the Heritage Foundation has pointed to study. I don't really like everything the Heritage Foundation puts out, but they've pointed to some of their studies showing about 5 to 10% job losses in low margin industries when wages are going to jump this quickly. Again, super predictable. Paid leave programs could add hundreds of millions to state costs, possibly leading to higher taxes. So that's the only thing. Again, a lot of people are going to, they're getting paid more, which also means they're going to get paid more for their leave. Just keep that in mind. And if federal tariffs do end up hitting, the legal challenges might not stop the damage fast enough for farmers or exporters. The bottom line is that this could strengthen the middle and working class, but it's going to risk squeezing the small employers in rural areas if not phased in carefully. Again, super basic kind of duh. That's just what happens when you bump the wages up like that. Obviously, it's going to probably be way worse for New York when it gets bumped up to about $25, inevitably about $30 an hour by 2028, or no, 2030. That's what I meant to say. Now, on education, Spanberger opposes school vouchers and wants to put more money into public schools, and then little programs like early childhood. She wants to improve teacher training. Excuse me. Anyway, she wants to improve early childhood programs, teacher training, smaller class sizes, and free dual enrollment courses for high schoolers in career fields. That's nice. She'd also block state-level mandates on LGBTQ plus students, leaving decisions to local school boards while encouraging parental input. Again, I talked about that earlier, how it's really silly, and I think you're a pushover and a loser if you're just going to let your school let men go into the women's bathroom. And so, like I was saying, yeah, she's leaving it up to the parents and the school board, but at the end of the day, she's still going to block anything that she deems discriminatory. Again, she's really trying to achieve this fairness thing that we see a lot going on, especially in New York. We're seeing this idea of just total equality and fairness. Obviously, my opinion is that life isn't fair. You can't make it fair. Now, that's not me dismissing any sort of change. Think of it this way. If there's a disabled kid in a wheelchair, we can make a ramp for him into the building. See, that is good change and that is good fairness, but you can't change outcomes. But I like the idea of giving every kid a fair shot when it comes to education. I really do think we need to focus heavily on education and making education cheaper, universities cheaper, college cheaper, get people into more complex and specific roles, specialized people. I really think we need to reinforce that. So I am very pro this. But Virginia's public schools have served the vast majority of students and many districts short on teachers and resources. So her plan is to help close those gaps and prepare students for real jobs. The only trade-off is that without the vouchers, families in struggling districts might not have alternatives, and property taxes could rise to fund the expansions. Again, people don't think about this. The Cato Institute has also argued that the competition improves outcomes. On social policies, local control avoids one-size-fits-all rules, but could lead to inconsistency and lawsuits across the state. So again, it's like you could get better education, but it might cost local businesses more. And the one-size-fits-all type of rules might lead to lawsuits and inconsistency. Then we're going to talk a little bit about healthcare. I think healthcare is one of the fundamental things in the U.S. that needs to change. So I can agree with some things said here, but not all. So first, she starts talking. She's first trying to modernize Medicaid with better online tools. She wants to expand free clinics, reform pharmacy benefit managers to lower drug costs, and train more mental health providers. I'm okay with that. I have a lot of pharmacy experience, and a lot of it's got to go. A lot of it's got to change, and I think long term it's going to be really hard to change. If I could totally reset the system, I could, but the thing is that train has already left the station, and it would be nearly impossible to do so. I mean, every day I worked in a pharmacy. I still work in a pharmacy. Every day there's something new. And something I disagree with. But these reforms, let's see. So yeah, expanding free clinics, reform pharmacy benefit managers to lower drug costs, more mental health providers. I think this hits home for a lot of people. And then making easier enrollment for mental health could cover about 100,000 more uninsured Virginians. Oh my gosh, sorry. Back that up. Making enrollment into insurance, like modernizing Medicaid, making it easier, could cover and help cover about 100,000 more uninsured Virginians. And this is according to the Kaiser Family Foundation. And it could save money by reducing emergency room visits. Drug price reforms could help seniors and families afford medications. Again, all stuff I agree with. It's just how are you going to do it? But reforms could backfire short term. Premiums might rise while changes roll out, and rural areas still struggle to attract doctors, so they're going to struggle with that no matter what. The state would need to find new funding, likely hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Now, with that being said, we're going to talk a little bit about reproductive and LGBTQ plus rights. She'll veto any abortion restrictions, plain and simple. She's going to work to codify access up to viability through a constitutional amendment and protect marriage equality and anti-discrimination laws in housing, jobs, and schools. I think this is a personal issue for many, and the polls show most Virginians support some level of access to abortion, and her stance aims to protect existing rights. Anti-discrimination laws extend basic fairness to all residents. Here's the thing, is that it's going to draw sharper lines. Some see this as going too far, especially on late-term access, and religious organizations worry about conflicts with conscience protections, and legal battles are inevitably going to get tied up when it comes to the resources. Abortion's a kind of a big topic, and I think I'd rather do a whole episode on that, but I'm very pro-life. And 99% of abortions are elected and have nothing to do with rape or incest. And so oftentimes abortion, all it does is promote promiscuity and obviously no accountability. It also is really scary when it comes down to what exactly Planned Parenthood and a lot of these clinics are doing when they make these that when they do these abortions. On top of that, the negative effects of the chemicals when you do a chemical abortion are very long term and going to affect you very negatively. There's a lot to the topic, and a lot of it has brought me, and this isn't even a biblical stance. I have a biblical stance for these things, but my more pragmatic, more secular stance involves a lot of the negative connotations that come along with just letting people do whatever they want and get an abortion no matter what. But again, I'd rather flesh that out much more longer form and when I'm more prepared. So then I'm going to kind of move on to the environment and energy. Spanberger plans to keep the Clean Economy Act. She wants to add battery storage for reliability and rejoin the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, the RGGI, to fund resilience projects. Virginia faces, they say Virginia faces real climate risks like flooding and storms. I don't think those are like climate change risks. I think those are just the normal things for Virginia, having lived here my whole life. No matter what, we always get storms, we always get flooding, and a lot of the time we do pretty well. And the RGGI revenue has already funded flood barriers and energy deficiency, and so this is just going to build on that a little bit more. I'm totally fine with that. Protect more homes. I say give more grants for letting people lift their houses off the ground. I know a lot of homes on the ocean front, like Virginia, in the Virginia Beach area, the Outer Banks area, need more accessibility for lifting their homes when they're in a flood zone. Only thing is the downside is that the energy bills could rise 5 to 10% in the near term, according to the State Corporation Commission. Rural communities dependent on traditional energy jobs might feel left behind without strong transition report. Now, kind of transitioning to public safety, immigration, housing, and voting. She'd rescind orders requiring full local cooperation with ICE. She wants to reform police qualified immunity for accountability. I'm fine with that. I think it should take a little longer to be a police officer. I think it should take longer than becoming a hairdresser. I'm fine with that. I'm not fine with abolishing the police altogether, though. Streamline housing approvals and automatically restore voting rights after sentences are served. As long as you're not a repeat offender, sure. These are about fairness and second chances. Again, be careful with the fairness, y'all. I'm okay with common sense fairness, but sometimes it might not always lead in the best direction. Police reform has bipartisan support in some forms, and housing approvals could speed up new construction in growing areas. Yeah, like I said, I think a lot of us can meet in the middle on gun reform and police reform, but abolishing them altogether is silly. It's not going to work. But rescinding ICE cooperation could strain local resources if federal deportations increase. Housing fast tracks might lead to a sprawl or higher density without community buy-in. Voting rights restoration is popular but could face legal pushback. Yeah. Overall, Spanberger's plan is measured and growth-focused. It could make Virginia more affordable and competitive, but success depends on managing costs and maintaining bipartisan cooperation in a divided legislature. Super basic political mumbo-jumbo at that point. So, again, I think all that said, Spanberger is pretty moderate. She's pretty kind of in the middle of the road. I'm hoping she leads well. I'll be praying for her. There are definitely some things I disagree with. I think they need to be addressed as soon as possible. But even at that, it's kind of going to be a little bit of a waiting game. There are some things she's going to do that I think the experienced individuals are going to look at that and be like, yeah, that's not going to work. I think if you do a little bit of reading or have a little bit of common sense, some things she's planning on doing are not going to work. Some things might even infringe on people's, personal beliefs. But at the end of the day, she's not the worst for Virginia. So I think it's a little crazy when people really want to flip out over that. I think people need to continue to flip out over Jay Jones getting his position as AG, though. I think we need to really focus on that one, hit that one hard. So I'm going to talk about New York just for a little bit. Zohran Mamdani, or Zohran, I think it's Zohran Mamdani. He's 33, one of their youngest mayors they've ever had. Born in Uganda, raised in Queens, and a proud democratic socialist. He's been in state assembly since 2021 and is closely tied to the Democratic Socialists of America. His people's agenda for NYC is ambitious: $50 billion in new investments over 4 years, funded by higher taxes on the wealthy and cuts to police overtime. His core beliefs sit around the idea that inequality is the root of most urban problems, and government should actively redistribute resources to fix it. We're going to talk a little bit about housing. He wants to create universal rent stabilization, a ban on corporate landlords, vacancy taxes, and a $10 billion public housing fund. This could protect millions of renters from steep increases, but rent control has a track record. Studies from Stanford and Manhattan Institute show it reduces construction by 10 to 20%, making shortages worse over time. Developer taxes could push investment to New Jersey or Connecticut. Again, you do rent control while everything else moves up. The quality of the buildings and the possibility of new buildings being built inevitably skyrockets down to the bottom. I guess you wouldn't say skyrocket, I'd say plummets. There we go. A little bit on the economy here. He wants to bump the minimum wage to $25 by 2030. So not 30, but $25 by 2030. A 50,000 person green jobs corporation pension divestment from fossil fuels. So he's wanting to create more jobs when it comes to green energy. That'll be interesting to see, because I don't know how you're going to do that in New York, but okay. Higher wages sound good for workers, but the Congressional Budget Office models suggest significant job losses in retail and hospitality. The Green Jobs Corps could create opportunities, but at $15,000 per position annually, it's expensive. And pension divestment has historically lowered returns, hurting retirees. Again, like I said about Virginia, you bump the wage up that much, it's going to hurt the smaller businesses. And New York is full of them. And you're going to see businesses move out of there completely, too. They're going to move out of there completely. Just ask people there. Anyway, now public safety. Oh boy. He wants to cut $1 billion from NYPD. That'll go over well. Fund community violence interrupters and mental health teams. And close Rikers Island by 2027. Yeah, because the guy on the bus, he's got a knife. And they're coming up to him with a clipboard and a paper, and they're asking him, where is this coming from? What was it like growing up? And he's just like, I'm gonna kill you. And they're just asking him, where's this coming from? Why are you so angry? Calm down. It's gonna be okay. I can't wait to be on the subway in New York in 2028. Sitting there, I'm bleeding out. I've got my matcha latte, and I've got world feminism playing in my ears, and I'm bleeding out. I paid $15 for my matcha. I haven't gone to the community government-run grocery store to get bread because the line has been wrapped around the block since last Wednesday. And the community violence interrupters are on the subway with me there, and they're confronting the man who just set a lady on fire. And they're asking him, hey, what's up with this? And he's stopped what he's doing, and he's listening. Lighter and gasoline in hand. He's listening, and he's nodding. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like bleeding out with my matcha, with my several slices of bread left, And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, thank God I voted Mamdani. Thank God. And I didn't pay anything to get on the bus. So now when I hop the railing, it's for free anyway, Now when I hop the railing, I'm not going to go to jail because it's not like I've been paying for the bus anyway, but Mamdani made sure that I wouldn't go to jail for not paying the bus fee. Sorry, subway fee. Anyway, some pilot programs have reduced shootings. Yeah, like inevitably, some sort of control has helped, but it's never full control. But broader relocations from 2020 to 2021 coincided with a 20 to 25% rise in subway crime per NYPD data. Closing Rikers without enough alternative capacity risks overcrowding and safety issues when it comes to the other prisons. Go figure. Go figure. I mean, seriously. It's just, it's funny because like when you ask people, you know, you're voting for Mamdani or you voted for Mamdani. Why is that? You know, what do you think? He wants to tax white neighborhoods a little bit more. You okay with that? Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. He wants to have you stand in line around the block to get your bread and milk. Are you okay with that? Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. And it's not like all these changes. Like, it's not like it's really like everywhere is expensive right now in the U.S. It's like, it's not like the change is really like if you were to even try to bring down prices, it's not like they'd be that drastic. You know what I mean? It's just really weird. It's like you're running on like a tiny bump in pay and you're basically going to risk the entire economy there for it. And you're basically going to risk putting, you know, New York into a giant socialist bubble just to get a tiny bump in pay. And then crime is going to skyrocket no matter what. Yeah, good luck with defunding the NYPD. Good luck. He's been running on that since 2020. Just look at his tweets. Then climate, education, and healthcare. He wants to put $20 billion down for green retrofits, free CUNY tuition, a universal healthcare pilot, and these are large-scale interventions. But energy mandates could raise utility bills by 15 to 25%. 15 to 25% without rebates, by the way. Free tuition might overwhelm CUNY, reducing the quality. Wow, who would have thought? Who would have thought? Who would have thought that you give free tuition, there's no incentive for that university to give good education? There's none. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? It's fine. It's fine. Common sense doesn't exist anymore. The healthcare pilot could cost $3 to $4 billion more than planned, per the Independent Budget Office. I mean, yeah, I don't think $20 billion is going to do it, but it's fine. Why might this struggle when it comes to all of these things? The scale is massive, and NYC doesn't control all the levers. Albany can block rent laws. The state budget is separate, and federal policy shifts could cut aid. Past progressive cities like San Francisco and Seattle have seen similar plans lead to deficits, business flight, and persistent homelessness despite high spending. Think about like when people confront Gavin Newsom, and they're like, so what do you think about blah, 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 blah in California? He's like, the most Fortune 500 companies in the entire U.S. and blah, 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 blah. My question for him is like, how many are leaving? Same thing for Seattle. For everyday New Yorkers and for urban policy nationwide, this could become a cautionary example. Wow. This really could become a cautionary example of good intentions without fiscal discipline or phased implementation often fall short. I agree with this. I think you can tout whatever ideas you want and smile into the camera. And when people ask you, how is it going to work? Well, I'm going to do blah, 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 blah. And you're going to spout things that show you've got no, idea how economics work. You are more than welcome to do that. And we're all going to watch. We're all going to watch. Good friend of mine, boss of mine, actually, when we were talking about how she thinks, and I agree with her, that New York is just phasing into a socialist communist bubble full of a bunch of people that sit on their phones all day and have no common sense and have no sense of reality and have been spoon-fed propaganda their whole lives. She said, coming from Vietnam, an actual communist country that is still communist to this day, she said, let them try it. Let them try it. And she said this with a big smile and a big chuckle. And they'll know. they'll know. Communism and socialism, they're not the same thing. They're similar. But I think it's funny that the only way they work is if they redistribute the wealth created by capitalism. It's really funny how that works. The target is success, like worker co-ops or violence interrupter programs. I would love for those to work. But I think people need to study those models and see if they actually are going to work, because it looks like they won't. So there you have it. Virginia's under Spanberger. It might be steady. It might be pragmatic. It's definitely focused on growth with some guardrails. New York is under Mamdani. It's really bold, really systemic, but it is carrying some risks of overreach, because inevitably, when you try to manufacture fairness, it always, in every single attempt and example, it always leads to authoritarianism. Always. Can't stress that enough. Anyway, thank you for listening. If you got thoughts on how these plans play out, or what you'd like to see next, or what you'd like me to talk about next, definitely drop a comment, a note, a DM. This has kind of been a sporadic episode, kind of all over the place. But I kind of wanted to take it as a little bit of an educational episode. If you have any questions on the economy or communism or socialism, I got a lot of my thoughts from Thomas Sowell and myself and experience, and not just listening to the same two talking heads over and over again. My views have they've evolved a lot, and I think within the last year I've moved maybe not as far right, but I've gathered some more liberal ideas for sure. And I think that's how it should be. I don't think you should just, partake in everything your party says to. You should think for yourself. And even if you're on the Democratic or blue side, just because they're Democratic socialists and they smile and they tell you they're going to give you everything you want, doesn't mean that it's going to work. It's not like I'm against affordable housing and cheap transportation, or even free transportation, or easier to access transportation. I'm fine with those things. It's how you're going to achieve them. And the second you start implementing socialist ideas, I'm going to look back at history and say, hey, has this worked before? And history is going to laugh in your face. And history is going to say, you go ahead, you try it. Anyway, that's all I got. Have a good rest of your week. Peace.